very much for the warm invitation to participate in this event, even from across the Pacific. This is my first time presenting into a live room, so bear with me for any logistical issues. So I'm Jonathan Kochmer. I'm the Director of Business Development for RChain Cooperative, and also the founder of RChain Asia. And I want to give a little bit of my background just for context. I've been using the internet professionally since 1981 and was one of the 3 internet consultants on the Yale University campus for about 6 years. I was studying evolutionary biology, doing a lot of biostatistics, which led to a lot of work in epidemiology. But also because of my background in the internet at Yale, I worked for several years on the team that helped build the backbone of the NSFNet in the United States from 1989 to 1994. I've been actually involved in 9 different startups along the way, but the most famous of the startups was I was employee number 9 at Amazon.com and helped build a lot of the features that we now take for granted, such as being able to browse the catalog instead of having to search the catalog, which was how it was for 2 years. And I also helped develop the enterprise-wide data model with a team of about 6 people that allowed Amazon to become more than just a bookstore and to become the everything store by generalizing the data model that had been started with just books. More recently, I worked for 5 years in ecological economics, and I helped build the world's largest computational engine to calculate the economic benefits that nature provides to the human economy. And that project is now being used by at least 40 countries, the United Nations and elsewhere, to give nature a voice at the negotiation table. So, in addition, and this will be relevant later in the talk, I was also a professional musician for 10 years, got into the Grammy process, had a record label, toured all over the place, and understand pretty intimately how the music industry is fundamentally broken. So that's my background in a nutshell. I'm on LinkedIn, so feel free to hunt me down and friend me, and I'll communicate with you directly there. Okay, hang on. Why is my slide not advancing? There we go. Okay, so tonight I'm going to give a summary of RChain architecture and features, but there's no way to possibly cover every single aspect of it because it is a very ambitious and complicated platform with tremendous potentiality. But the main 4 things that we're trying to address are scalability, security, speed, and sustainability. So, which is pretty much the mission of most 3rd generation all-purpose blockchains, and we're running in that space too. And tonight I'm going to just discuss a few of the specific ways that we solve these problems. I'm going to focus mostly on sharding and a little bit on our smart contract programming language, Roland. But all of these different things, sharding, namespaces, our virtual machine, formal verification, correct by construction, and our particular flavor of proof of stake are all fundamental to our capabilities. And unlike a lot of blockchain projects, I think Hashgraph is among them. Our work is really based on decades of mathematical research, primarily by our founder, Greg Meredith, who has been thinking about things that are applying now to the implementation of the RChain platform to its creation. In particular, he discovered in his PhD work the Milner's pi calculus and became very interested in mobile process calculi. So he's our founder and our president. He's collaborating very closely with Mike Stay from Pyrofex, who has also been collaborating on the development of the underlying mathematical foundation of RChain. And Vlad Zamfir, who you probably all know as a researcher for the Ethereum Foundation, has been collaborating with Greg and Mike for about 1.5 years on the implementation of the Casper protocol in the RChain context. Standard sort of slide here, placing RChain in comparison to Bitcoin and Ethereum. We're aiming for the tens of thousands of transactions per second. We're using proof of stake instead of proof of work. One of the key differentiators is that our entire architecture and programming language really embraces the advantages that are offered by concurrency. And also, as I heard Hashpass talking about, we're very much interested in content delivery over the blockchain. And I'll talk a bit more about that later. So I want to talk about a few of the things that I'm most excited about in terms of our underlying architecture. I'm very interested in sharding, both because of its applications to solving some problems in blockchain, but also because it's an example of what I see as the underlying biomimetic foundation to a lot of how and why RChain is built the way it is. I should mention that Greg Meredith, for example, in addition to having architected BizTalk for Microsoft 15 years ago, which is still being used widely, also did a lot of work with cell communications in microbiology. So a lot of the way that we're thinking about how to solve problems in blockchain really come from a biomimetic perspective, though it's not something that people other than myself generally point out. And my way of thinking about it is nature and biology and evolution have gotten things right for 4 billion years, and it's not a bad idea to copy some of the principles that have been proven through time. And in particular, sharding helps solve one of the main problems with Ethereum and Bitcoin, which is that in those systems, every single node needs to know everything that's happening in every other node. And we tend to think more in terms of there being transactional neighborhoods. And there's both topological solution to that and computational solutions to that. But it really becomes, the RChain architecture really becomes very much like a tree structure where interactions and transactions are taking place in local branches. And the branches can be defined in shards in regards to many different attributes. So, for example, you can define shards that are specifically optimized for very high performance. And this is a slide I don't expect you to actually read. It's from our technical deck that I'll provide a link to later. But there are many advantages to being able to define a priori certain shards to be high performance shards. Similarly, you can think of shards as being geographically defined or functionally defined. So, for example, there may be shards in the RChain network that are specific to Singapore or London or Addis Ababa, because a lot of the transactions that take place in those communities are actually geographically, or there's a large percentage of them that are geographically defined. And similarly, certain dApps that are built on the blockchain platform might have certain performance or storage or security requirements. So I'm very excited about the heterogeneity that sharding allows to the overall network architecture. I want to touch briefly also on our smart contract language, Rolang. And as I mentioned, Greg Meredith's prior research was in Milner's process calculi, specifically the pi calculus. And this is a very different paradigm of computation than the lambda calculus that we're all familiar with and take for granted. The computational models, for the most part, have been following the footsteps of Turing tapes and sequential programming, whereas mobile process calculi are much more interested in concurrency and also being built very close to the formal underpinnings of such languages can be formally verified, treating the languages themselves as mathematical proofs. And that's going to be very important in terms of the security of our smart contracts. So we have a pretty fully fleshed out new programming language here. This is our cheat sheet, which contains pretty much every command in the Rolang language. We are adding additional capabilities to turn Rolang into a general purpose language, not exclusively for smart contracts. And we see applications of Rolang beyond blockchain to applications such as telecommunications, biological research, and so forth. Rolang, because it is so close to its formal specifications, is exceedingly compact. And this is just a very simple side-by-side comparison of Rolang and Python doing the same sets of tasks. In particular, as I mentioned, concurrency is a foundational feature of Rolang, and the parallelism instructions in Rolang are considerably more compact than those, say, in Python or many other languages. And I realize Python is just one. There's other languages, of course, that have concurrency built in as well, but we feel ours is particularly elegant. And these are the planned differentiators that we're hoping to launch with launch of mainnet in Q2, and we're about to start the hardening process, which anybody that's been building a blockchain or been around blockchains being built understands is very important. So we're aiming for concurrency and speed. We're aiming for scalability. We're aiming for computational safeness with reliable smart contracts that are formally verified. This is one of the biggest concerns that we have with the notion of having very, very fast blockchains, which is that if the DAO hack, for example, had happened in Ethereum, and in Ethereum that was operating at a much, much faster speed, just about everybody's Ethereum wallet could have been drained almost instantaneously. So we feel that if you're going to be creating a very, very fast blockchain, moving money around, you need to have formally verified and secure smart contracts. We're also, of course, being with proof of stake, we're going to be much more energetically efficient. And we even have people now running nodes on Raspberry Pis. I think 16 gig memory is the requirement for the Raspberry Pis. And we have economically decentralized storage using LMDB. So again, just to go over the summary of the architectural and other features of RChain, we're taking advantage of sharding namespaces, which treats the addressing of nodes within the blockchain essentially as URNs in a URN tree-like structure, and the row calculus, which I've touched on. The security is being addressed, as I've touched on, with formal verification. Also correct by construction, which is a model of program development that was embraced in England when people were constructing ATMs, writing code for ATMs and nuclear power plants and such. And then speed, we're taking advantage of concurrency, and the concurrency exists both between nodes in the platform and also within a smart contract. So the code executed in an RChain smart contract, the instructions can be executed concurrently. Again, going back to this notion of biomimesis, I like to think of concurrency as being analogous to what happens in each and every one of your bodies every day, where every cell in your body has exactly the same DNA instructions, exactly the same 23 chromosomes, and the exact same sequence of genes, with the exception of a little bit of modulation with I forget what the technical term is, but glycosylation? No, not glycosylation, something like that. So the RChain network basically behaves in a lot of ways, and the code base behaves in a lot of ways like all the simultaneous things happening in your body, where the same DNA is being executed simultaneously for different purposes. So pancreas cells are expressing pancreas gene expression, and ganglion cells are doing ganglia gene expression. And there's no requirement for asking permission. All of this concurrency is happening in the wild. And then again, we're addressing sustainability with proof of stake. So when I say sustainability, I'm talking about energetic sustainability. Hang on a second here. This slide is not advancing. Okay, here we go. To help people, to help adoption of our platform, we've been in collaboration with PyroFX to develop a DIDE for smart contract development, and this CryptoFX package supports both Rolang and Solidity. So we're hoping that people that come in to use CryptoFX for Solidity then poke around in Rolang and see its considerable advantages above and beyond what Solidity offers in terms of security and speed. And we'll also be creating a marketplace attached to the CryptoFX platform so that people can monetize their work. We have a pretty rich ecosystem under development, even though we haven't fully launched. And we have several platform partners who already have working prototypes, including Switch and Proof Media. And I'll talk about them briefly. And we're pretty, we're taking a pretty broad, we're not limiting ourselves to any one area of application. As chance has it, we've pretty much settled into 4 areas. Tools and interoperability. So, for example, CryptoFX is itself a distributed DIDE. Fintech, of course, interest, and asset tracking and media and entertainment have very interesting overlap that I'll get into in a minute. So here's some of our platform partners with their pretty logos, and they're all doing very interesting things. One I really want to give a call out to is Reshore, which has identified an exceedingly interesting and previously unoccupied space in the insurance industry that would not have been possible without a blockchain foundation. So this is Switch. This is one of our platform partners that's up and running, and they're working on optimization of green energy usage by very heavy energy users like data centers. And in fact, they're currently working with 2 of the largest data centers in the world that are being built in Korea. I forget the exact units of measurement, but it's something like 300 megawatts of energy usage. One of them is the Korean data center for Microsoft. The other is a Korean data center for another provider that I'm not at liberty to mention, I don't think. But Switch is taking advantage taking advantage of blockchain architecture to address a sustainability issue. Another very practical application that I'm very proud of in terms of our platform partners is Proof Media, and they're working on addressing the issue of fake news. And if you know anything about American politics, that has had an absolutely catastrophic impact upon our political processes. And what Proof Media is doing is deploying tokenization and placing wagers on the veracity of news items. And if you are trying to game the system by wagering that the stories are true that are not true, you lose your stake. So this is a tokenization of veracity. I was very excited when I went to Korea recently that the Korean government is now actually making a national initiative to fight fake news at the federal level. So we're hoping to partner Proof up with the Korean government to help their initiatives. And now here's a particularly interesting application on RChain. We have this application called RSong, which actually delivers audio content that is stored on chain. And we've also partnered with a company called Immersion, and we're able to encode wave quality files at below MP3 size. So this makes it much more economical to consider delivering audio content on blockchain. And if you have a cell phone, which I'm sure you all do, if you have either Android or iTunes or iOS, we have versions of both of those on rsong.org. So you can just go to rsong.org, download the apps. We only have 3 songs in there right now. We're working on all sorts of things in terms of metadata and coming up with a way to accelerate uploading into the system. The thing that we're most excited about with RSong is that it's allowing the tracking of all of, and this again comes from, I appreciate this having come from the music industry. It allows all of the micropayments and attribution and payments that are associated with any piece of music to go directly to the wallets of musicians. So it totally disintermediates a lot of the parties that typically in the current music industry are each taking a slice of the pie from the consumer before it gets to the composer or the session musician or the producer or the copyright holders. So we're very, very excited about this. And one of the very interesting side benefits of the RSong platform is that because of its architecture, we realize that we have a generalizable asset management system that's not just utilizable for audio content, but essentially any kind of digital assets. And this is a schematic of the architecture that was created by the RSong architect, initially with a mind just to delivering audio content over blockchain. But it turns out that with not much effort, this can be generalized for managing any digital assets on blockchain. And we're currently in the process of rebranding this underlying architecture into something like RChain Asset Management System or something like that. And we already have a bunch of teams that are deploying different aspects of this to provide the fundamental underpinnings of many, many other kinds of dApps that can be built on RChain. I want to talk a bit about RChain Asia. On June 19th, I flew to Singapore to sit in for our founder, Greg Meredith, who couldn't go to Coin Agenda. And within 2 days, I realized that there was a tremendous opportunity that RChain, based in North America, was not really exploring. So starting June 19th, I was the founder of RChain Asia, and we've had a lot of wonderful things happening already. In the upper left-hand corner, this is Gyeongsang-buk-do in South Korea, which is wanting to become a Zug of Asia. And they've asked me and Brock Pierce and other actual luminaries in the blockchain space to join a committee to help the governor of Gyeongsang-buk-do, who was actually elected on a platform of getting blockchain industry in Korea really going. So we're advising the governor of Gyeongsang-buk-do province on blockchain implementation. And his personal goal is to get as many of the 200,000 companies in his province using the blockchain as possible. We've also run our first Rolang RChain educational project in Korea, in Gimcheon. And here's one of our star students receiving his diploma. And we had 25 developers come. And one of them is now going to be helping us with RChain Korean language node testing. And Stella here is now working with our Korean marketing team. This is Jocelyn Lee. She's our Director of Business Development for RChain Asia. And this is a class of very happy students. It was a wonderful experience. And so the plans for RChain Asia specifically are, as I mentioned, we're going to be having Chinese and Korean language node testing for practical reasons, but also by way of getting more exposure to our platform and the advantages of our programming language and our architecture into the Chinese and Korean communities. We actually have our largest body of RChain, people interested in RChain are actually in China. It's something like 5-fold more Chinese RChain participants in our communities as opposed to Europe and North America. This will also be leading to our proliferating validators in Southeast Asia and East Asia to support the mainnet launch in Q2. We are going to build on our success in Korea with more RChain specific and general blockchain education. We're currently in talks with some officials in the Seoul government about providing blockchain and RChain education to technical community, and also a similar initiative happening in Singapore. We're very interested in establishing university partnerships and R&D centers. We're currently in talks with 2 Korean universities about submitting grants to the Korean government for such activities. And of course, the obvious things of getting government grants and partnerships, supporting enterprise-scale POCs. And a personal interest of mine, because my background is supporting sustainability projects, and it turns out that our Director of Business Development, Jocelyn Lee, also worked in sustainability with the World Bank, the New Zealand government, and elsewhere. So we're kind of uniquely interested and capable of actually doing some practical things with sustainability on blockchain. So we have we've started a whole bunch of active groups in China and Korea. So if anybody wants to chime in our Asia-specific communities, these are Chinese and Korean language channels specifically. And of course, we have the standard English language platforms for our community. Our website is rchain.coop. We are a cooperative, which is unusual in technology, but co-ops have proven themselves to work in many other domains. And we have a very good developer website, developer.rchain.coop. And GitHub, we are, I think, the 7th most active blockchain project right now in terms of GitHub commits.
Third. We're the third.
That's a great place to go. So I think I'm done, and I would be happy to answer any questions I can.
Thank you, Jonathan. Any questions? I have one question for you, Jonathan, if you can hear me.
Yes, I can.
Yeah, so speaking from a project perspective, hearing my technology and the applications already in place are very exciting. Could you walk us through very quickly on what kind of support or what would be the experience be like for a project looking to build an RChain?
At this point, we have some very, very good tutorials on Golang. We have a white paper which is being updated because there have been some architectural decisions made along the way. The white paper was last updated June 2017. There's very, very active Discord channels within our RChain Discord for Q&A by developers. Also, there's a forum in developer.rchain.coop that are resources. One thing that I'm personally doing is acting as a bit of a concierge between existing platform partners and people that are interested in doing development and mixing and matching. So in the past week, for example, I've assembled a small SWAT team of people that are interested in building some of the components of a social network. They're characterizing it as a better Steemit. So right now, it's really just a matter of getting into the community and identifying people who have shared passions for creating the same kind of application that you want to.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much, Jonathan, dialing all the way in from Hawaii.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm very proud to be now an official LongHash mentor, and I look forward to sharing my experiences, both wonderful and terrible, from being in 9 startups and trying to help people avoid making the same mistakes.
Thank you, Jonathan. I think all the incubators will definitely benefit a lot from your experiences, and thank you.
Okay.
That sounded like Eva. Thank you.
Yeah.